I'm Dr. Bill Satterwhite. Welcome to this section of the live presentation entitled A Doctor's Prescription for Well-Being. There are 6 sections overall that comprise the whole talk. I hope you enjoy this 14-minute section on how work can be a source of dis-ease in our lives, and how you can shift your perspective so that work becomes a context of ease and well-being. So the topic is well-being. When you all contacted me and said, hey, it's kind of changed, used to be substance abuse, now we're talking about well-being. I said, great, I've been thinking a lot about well-being. And I began to think even more about it and say, well, what does that mean, actually? Like, what does that mean? The word well-being, wellness, those things, they've kind of gotten diluted out, and I'm not really sure a lot of times when someone says that what they mean. And so I just began to ponder for a while, what would it be like to just live in a state of well-being all the time? Right? I mean, for all of us, mostly it's a pursuit. Gosh, I hope I get to a place of well-being, a place of peace, a place of being at ease with life. What would it be like to be that way all the time? And then I began to think, okay, well, so what are all the things that get in the way for me with that? You know, I want to live a life of peace and ease. What are the things that create dis-ease for me? Dis-ease for me. Now, of course, in healthcare, we've stolen the word dis-ease and called it disease and aligned that just to things that go wrong with your body. But in reality, it's a holistic idea. What are the things in life that create dis-ease for me? And we are actually going to look at 6 of the things that I thought of. Frankly, it started by me thinking about myself. What are the things that have created or still create dis-ease in my life? How can I sort of remedy that? What is the cure? So that then I can get to a place of ease, right? Then I can get to a place of ease. What would it be like if every moment of every day felt like that person walking down the beach at sunrise? You go, wow, that's pretty cool. So that's our goal, for everyone to figure out how they're going to feel like that every day. So we're going to look actually at these 6 areas. We're taking them all on. Work, finances, fitness, fun, friends, family. Things that can create difficulties for all of us in one way or another. So let's start with work. When you meet someone new, what is the question they always ask you within a couple of minutes? And this is where you help me here, right? Where do you work? Good, I already queued you up with a former slide. You know work is coming. That's the answer. Work is coming. Yeah, we always ask each other where you work. Now what's interesting is, we think that's very normal, right? I mean, I do it. I've probably done it to some of you all today. I've got a friend from Germany who came over to the U.S. when he was probably 45. And at some point, he stopped me one day and he said, Bill, tell me something. Why does everyone ask you, like, what you do or where you work when you first meet them? He said in Germany, we consider that a very private thing. Like, you don't ask somebody what they do or where they work for months of knowing them. I never had that thought before, because I'm one that's going to ask all of you what you do at the same time, right? That's what we do here. Why is that? Well, I think part of it is because we define our identity here in this country by what we do, what we have, and what people think of us. What we do, what we have, and what people think of us. That's how most of us get our identity, right? We've got industries based on all of those, right? Think about social media up in the top corner. The whole thing is based on envy, right? The whole thing is based on envy. I felt good about my new Toyota minivan until I saw all of my friends that had like fancy Lexus and Mercedes, and then I felt terrible, right? It's the same car. You know, I'm the same person. Why? Because that's what it's based on. And if you have any girls in middle school or high school, you know that that is a problem, right? Because it's in those years that you get your identity from your peer group. And so you got more likes on your post, your picture, you know, than I did, right? That's what happens. So what we do, what we have, and what others think of us. Now, let's unpack that a little bit. You may be saying, oh, that's true for you, Bill. It's not true for me. I can read some of your minds. That's not true for me, you're saying. And so how do you know if part of your identity is based on something like that? Well, the best way I figured it out in my own life is to take it away and see what happens.
All right, take it away and see what happens. If I wreck my minivan and never have one again, I'm not like huddled on the bed in the fetal position, wondering, who am I, right? Not at all. So I'll tell you a story about one of the ways that I began to figure out what I was basing my identity on. And I'll say up front, I would consider all three of those false identities. Those are things that aren't really who you are. Those are false identities. So when I was in ninth grade, that was when I decided I would start studying. So before that, I just kind of read over stuff and take a test or whatever. And, I didn't do all that well. My parents were not happy because I was in a private school. They're like, why are we paying so much money if you get like C's and D's? And I was like, no problem, no problem. Ninth grade is when it counts. I'll start trying. So I decided to start trying. I started doing well. Did really well in high school. Got to college. Thought I'm going to keep the same strategy. Did even better in college. Went to law school. Tricky with 100% finals. You don't really have a whole lot of, practice runs there, right? So did pretty well the first semester. Thought, okay, I'm getting the hang of this. I'm going to go. Second semester, I got a couple C's. Well, I hadn't gotten a C in a long time. And here's the thing. That actually was devastating for me. It was devastating for me. And the rest of the report card was good, but still, here are these things that were taking me back to like 7th grade. And I didn't know what to do with that. People asked me, what did you do with that? Here was my strategy, right? I said, okay, honey, when my report card comes in the mail at the end of the semester, because that's how it came in those days, when it comes in the mail, you open it, tell me if I passed, and if I did, I'd just keep going, right? I did that for the next 2 years. Had no idea what my grades were, had no idea what my class rank was. I was like, I cannot handle that. And I think part of the reason, I didn't know it then, but I know now, is because a lot of my identity was based on these three things: appearance, achievement, and approval, right? I figured out if you achieve, you get lots of approval. Not just from my parents, but from everybody. Everybody and everything. And all of a sudden, I wasn't all the way up there where I had been. And I didn't know that that's kind of how I defined myself, but I think that's actually what was going on. So I said a moment ago that things like, what you do, what you have, what people think of you are not your real identity. And you may say, okay, Bill, you have convinced me. You're such a good orator. You have convinced me in 2 minutes. So you want to know, how do you figure out what your identity really is? Right? All of us were born with sort of these innate things that get expressed, that just come out. Well, I figured the easiest way to get you to understand it, kind of a slow crowd here, is by talking about my two dogs. All right, my two dogs. Scout, the brown dog, Sam, the black dog. Sam is a Labradoodle, fancy custom-made dog. Scout is a mutt. We picked him up at the pound. We did DNA testing on him. The number one thing is like mix. The number two thing was hound dog, though. He was some kind of hound dog, right? Well, so here's the interesting thing. People, like the black dog, would retrieve stuff, and people often said, how did you teach him to retrieve? How did you do that? I'd love to teach my dog how to do that. I said, I threw the ball out there, and he would go get it and bring it back. I said, that's it. That was my whole instruction. I threw the ball out, he would go get it and come back. He particularly loved to do that in the water, right? He would do it in the water for hours. I'd be like, Sam, I'm exhausted. I'm so tired of throwing this thing out. He didn't care. He was going to jump in, go get it, and swim back. The brown dog, on the other hand, had a different strategy. He was not a great swimmer. He could swim. Initially, he would jump in, but he didn't have web feet. He couldn't swim that fast. He would never get to the little floating buoy. So finally, he decided, I'm away at the top of the ramp, and when the dog comes up with it, I'm stealing it from him. And that was his plan, right? That was his plan. And I will tell you, he could smell like crazy, though. I would let him out in the morning, and he would literally stand at the top step on the back porch, and he would smell the air in every direction. He would just be like, and he was figuring out what had happened last night, right? What kind of critters had walked through there? Sam couldn't smell anything. You could drop, a burger on the floor and he wouldn't know where it was. Scout got the burgers. Okay, so what does that have to do with us? And what does that have to do with identity? And here's one of these key points I really want you to take home. Doing actually comes out of being. So for Sam the Labradoodle, why did he go retrieve? Well, just because that's how he was wired up. That's just what he did. It didn't matter the setting. He was going to be that way. All right? The same is true for us as people. We are born with certain identities, things we do really well, that are the core of who we are. It is not, what grade you get in law school or anywhere. It is not actually what your title is in a law firm. It is not the house you live in or the car you drive or what anybody else thinks of you. That is not your identity. That is not who you are. Now, according to the professional ethics, there is sort of an express professional identity, but what I would say about that is that actually comes out of your true identity, who you really, really are. And that's going to get expressed in every setting. So here are just some thoughts on what those things can be like. You can be a builder. I don't mean of like buildings, although you could do that. But you could be one who says, I am great at starting programs and turning them into something, right? That person's kind of a builder. They know what to do, right? They can do that. You could be somebody who says, I love solving puzzles. It doesn't matter whether it's one on my kitchen table or whether it's a trial matter or whether it's, a medical mystery. I just like to do that. I'm just good at that, right? So it doesn't matter the context. Who you are will just sprout up no matter what. For me, I'm more in this second column, that of being a teacher and a coach for people. Every single profession, every single job, I sort of wander into those things and say yes. Why? Well, because I'm like Sam the Labradoodle. You just throw it out there and I'll go get it, right? Same for some of these others. And you indeed can come up with your own. And what I would love to have is for you to recognize that your doing, again, it doesn't matter what your particular type of law is or anything else, is going to come out of who you are. It's going to come out of who you are. So these would be your points of reflection. That's sort of your weekend homework, is to think about, what is my true identity? Who am I really, really under it all? If we had a rule in here that you can't ask anyone what they do for the next 30 days, what would people say you are, right? Who are you? What would they see in you? And so one way to do it is ask your friends. You can ask your friends. They'll tell you what you're really good at, right? They'll just say, you're great at this, right? You always make me laugh. Or, got a friend whose daughter is a fabulous artist. Fabulous artist. I mean, she painted pictures of those two dogs that were just like caught their personalities. I was like, I need to pay you $200. This must have taken forever. She said, no, it took about 30 minutes. She said, anybody can do that. I said, no, they can't, actually. I can't draw like stick dogs, and you're doing this. And she's like, no, it's a big deal. Now, why am I saying that? Because often others recognize our gifts and talents and who we really are, and not us. Because it comes so easily to us, right? If my dog could talk, he would not say, I'm a great retriever. He'd say, well, of course, you just jump in and go get it, right? So it's the same for people. You might need help in knowing that.
Thank you so much for listening to this section of A Doctor's Prescription for Well-Being. I hope you found it both enjoyable and meaningful to you personally in your life. And I hope that you will engage in some of the strategies and ideas to get you to a place of ease and well-being. I also hope that you will share it with at least 5 other people in your family, your friends, at work, or other places. Thank you.